Welcome back to the Bold Moves podcast. We are having some fun today. We're actually talking about the idea of being lost here for a minute. You guys ever been lost or had a kid that got lost? What's that sensation like? Any good stories of being lost before or no? What you got?
It definitely happens. This wasn't too long ago that I was in Chicago and like my phone was kind of wigging out and so GPS was not working properly.
Yeah, that
I was going through like a sketchy part of town, which is like most of Chicago apparently. And that's not really true. But I couldn't get myself back on track. I mean, I didn't know where I was going.
That's frustrating.
It's like if you're on the interstate, like there's signs everywhere. You can figure that out. But like if you're not and you're in a neighborhood or something that you don't know.
That's a different thing.
What do you do? And it makes me wonder, like, what did we do before GPS was even a thing?
Corey, let me just interject right there. My dad would write the directions on Post-it notes if he saw a recent Facebook post I made. And that's how he would get there, by following the directions he wrote out on Post-it notes, because he still does that today.
That's interesting. We do that. This happens all the time, though. Like, we'll get in the car, family trip to wherever, someplace close, and I'll just drive right there. And Kenzie will often ask, "How did you know how to get there without GPS?"
Perfect.
Well, I used to drive without it, actually,
there you go.
a long time ago.
There was a day when we were not completely dependent on our phones.
Yeah.
Have you ever parked your car somewhere and forgotten where it's parked?
That's the worst.
We did that at Cedar Point once.
That's a big parking lot.
We walked.
There's a lot of wandering
all
involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always take the picture of the sign
That's
by
true.
your car.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's what we do. Yeah, but then if your phone dies, you're straight out of luck again. That's true. Kristen, how about you? Ever dealt with time of loss or anything like that?
Well, kind of similar to Chicago. John, we were walking somewhere and I was hangry, and John got us lost trying to find places around Chicago. So that was a memory. One time I lost, 2 out of the 3 kids I've lost in a store. One was far more scary than the other. It was May when she was about a year, maybe a year and a half. We were at the front of the store, and I was looking at something, looked at her, looked back, and I mean it was that fast, and
she's gone.
And then I looked again, and she was gone.
Ugh, that's terrifying.
I nearly had them shut down the store and call the. Is that an Amber Alert?
Yeah, that would be it.
Would be
Amber Alert.
Yeah,
because I was sure
that's the
we were
worst.
right by the door that. It only made sense that either she ran out the front door or somebody picked her up and walked out the front door. So I was terrified. And I'm assuming she was a mom. She didn't have any kids with her, but she saw that mom panic in my eyes. And I said, I can't find her. And I said, she's wearing this. And we searched. We came back and forth to each other like, oh, did you find her? No. Well, finally, she did walk up and she had May in... She was holding May's hand, walking up to me, and I, like, my baby, like, I hugged her, and I instantly smelled something foul. And it was a dirty diaper. She ran to the corner of the store to do some business.
Excellent.
And I was like... sweet reunited
equally
moment
parts
over.
Relieved and really perturbed all at the same time. Yes.
I was like, well, let's go.
Oh man, losing the kids is the worst. It's awful. I had an encounter that was very strange this last weekend. I was actually on a flight. I flew from Tampa to Nashville. Ironically, on a flight that was later in the night, left at like 9:30. There were only 7 people on this flight. It was like the closest thing to a private charter experience I've ever had. Yeah. But the thing about it, there was 2 ladies, like I would say girls that are probably in their mid-20s on this flight with me. And as I was sitting in the waiting area, I overheard their conversation because they were a little bit loud and a little bit belligerent. They had apparently just sat there oblivious to what was going on around them and just completely missed their flight that they were waiting for. Just missed it. Like during their 20s, they missed it. They were on the phone, speakerphone with their parents. Their parents were just yelling at them, going, "What's wrong with you two?" Like it was awkward. It got to the point where they were so helpless, they had to take their mom on speakerphone to talk to the lady at the desk to make sure they got on the right flight, which was the one I was on to Nashville. So I already know it's kind of like, oh, this is not great. You know, they're not the brightest crayons in the box, if you will. But when they started to board the plane, remember there's only 7 of us, so it was very funny. They said, if you're group 1, join. Well, honestly, if anyone here is going to Nashville, go ahead and board. Like that's how they did it. It was awesome. Yeah. So these 2 were in the front, and then they had a pocket full of paper boarding passes, and they couldn't figure out which one was to the actual flight that they were boarding now because they had. So it took them about 3 minutes to figure it out. All 7 of us on the flight are waiting for them. It was awesome.
It's fantastic.
How is this possible? There's still a line and there's only 7 of us. They were fighting as they entered the plane right in front of me, which row was theirs because they didn't know which flight they were on. We're in row 11. There's only 7 of us on the plane. It doesn't matter. Like, that's what I wanted to say. But the grand finale to this, why I tell the story, was when they got off the plane. One of them had way too much to drink, was wobbling. They're trying to carry her. As we're leaving the airport, it's 11 o'clock at night. No one's there. It's empty. There are 2 very obvious directions you can go. One huge sign that says exit, baggage claim, ground transportation. The other one to terminal A and B. These 2 take off toward terminal A and B. The airport's empty. There's no one there. And they're just wandering their way down terminal A and B. And there were 2 other people with me. We just kind of saw where they were heading, and we just all just started laughing, like, okay, all right. And the legend has it that they're still wandering through Terminal A and B in Nashville, trying to figure out how to get out of the airport. But you talk about like being lost. Like, it's one thing when you're a kid, like you're a year and a half, like you wander off. It's like, okay, that's a thing. Then you're in your 20s and kind of incapable of figuring out basic life skills.
In a place where there's a sign every 10 steps to tell you where to go.
Yes. And people to direct you.
Yes. All of the things. Yeah. And so it made me chuckle, but it made me think, like, in life, we are the same exact way. Like when God calls us sheep in the Bible, it's not because we're cute and cuddly. It's because we're dumb. Like we lack the skills to figure these things out on our own sometimes. And there's something about not only acknowledging the fact that we have been lost, we were lost, but we've been found, but the recognition that there are people all around us who are lost and they're struggling and they're desperate. When you have that recognition that those people are around us, it kind of changes your perspective on realizing, oh, I can actually help someone who is lost come to find Jesus to be found. Sure. And there's not many people I know who are better at keeping people focused on that reality and that truth than the friend we have joining us on the podcast today. So can we give a warm, Bold Moves welcome to our friend, Kevin Jack? We are joined by Kevin Jack. Kevin, thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you as always.
I am thrilled to be back. It is good to see. I believe all the pictures are still the same in the background from the last time I was on here.
Yes, we are averse to any kind of change around here, Kevin. It will never happen. It will always stay the same.
I hope that's not true, actually.
It's great.
Kristen and I were at M25 with a bunch of people from our staff, and you killed it at M25, Kevin. It was awesome. That was a great experience.
Thanks, man.
Kristen, you had a couple comments, though, about Kevin. Tell him what you were telling us earlier.
I can't tell you this.
No, tell Kevin what you told us earlier. This is great.
I said, when you walked up on stage and I leaned over to Kelsey, and who you know from down there, I said, hey, I have that outfit. To be clear, he wore, for people that weren't there, he wore a deep V-neck cardigan.
It was a deep V. It was good, Kevin. It was good.
Well, it wasn't that deep when I put it on that morning, and then like slowly throughout the day, it started just sagging more and more. It was like, all right, here we go.
Funny.
I'm pretty sure I saw your belly button, but it's fine. It's fine. Whatever.
No, he had like a tank top or something on underneath, I think.
I was so I wore a cardigan. So good, and my staff called me Kevin again the rest of the day. So that
was fun. Good. So we're giving you as much grief as your staff was. That's fantastic. I feel like we're on the same plane.
I fully expect it.
Perfect. In all seriousness, you crushed it. And I just so appreciated what you had to say. And in addition to that, I had the pleasure of joining you at your church for a conference you just did last weekend. And Friday night specifically, you were just talking about the significance of the calling. And I would love for you to just kind of share some of those principles from that night, because it is so good for us to think about life in terms of the calling that we have and what that represents. So, I mean, drop some knowledge on us, Kevin. What do you think and what's been on your mind?
So the back end to the message on Friday night of our conference that we do just for our church is it was about midway through COVID that I became curious and then honestly kind of obsessed with this idea of calling.
Yeah.
And the thing that I had realized is I started noticing this difference in people's lives in the midst of government and life shutdown and everything else, that people who had a sense of internal purpose, intrinsic value, that it didn't really rattle them, the world shutting down. They found new ways to do the things they were already doing.
Yep, that's good.
And people who had jobs and didn't have that internal purpose, that it was just devastating. And it was like something that really shook them. And then I realized, because when I was a kid, I heard a lot about calling in church. And I realized that what had happened over time is that the church quit talking about calling and secular culture picked it up.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
And there were all these, it's fascinating, all these articles, stuff on like Good Morning America, stuff like that on your calling. And it was just like, the problem is, now we're talking about this term of calling without one who is doing the calling.
Oh,
and it was like they had changed this idea of my calling from God to simply work that I find meaningful, or something that I can find a sense of purpose in.
Yes. Which are two very different things.
Exactly. So Friday night at conference, the kind of lead into this is we did 2 days for our congregation, all on the idea of calling, which is kind of our theme for the year. And the thing that I really wanted to set in was why calling is so important. And so I wanted to distinguish the difference between your identity and your life.
Yes.
And I think what happens is that we push them together, and then we'll make the initial statement of that, like, you have value because of what God has done.
Yep.
The value of something is what someone is willing to pay for it. Jesus was willing to give his life for you. And so inherently you have value, you have worth.
Yes.
Which is great. Like, it is the gospel. That is the gospel message. But to actually draw a line of delineation that there's a difference between your identity and your life.
Yes.
That you are not your life. You are not the sum total of your accomplishments. And that while Jesus died for you, then the gift that he gave you is your life. And so the disturbing truth in the midst of all that is you have inherent worth separate from anything that you do, but your life might not.
And that's something that's really difficult to navigate, right? Like, that can rattle you a little bit. That probably doesn't set very well with some people. That could be seen as offensive, but Kevin has the gift of saying offensive things without people getting offended. Kevin, how do you do that? It's maddening.
I don't know if I'd have the gift. I just more so do it. I guess sometimes people get that. I don't really know at this point.
I get angry emails, Kevin. If you don't get angry emails, I'm really upset. I'm really upset right now. Hey, where you started?
On that note, I probably quit getting angry emails like 8 years ago.
Oh, really? That's
I don't
interesting.
know why.
Do you get emails at all? Maybe that's why.
No.
Okay.
Our staff does, but I don't really get emails anymore.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's actually great. And I was exaggerating. I don't get very many, but when I do, they're awesome. I'm just going to be honest. They're amazing. So that's good to know. Hey, let me ask you this. You had said something that was intriguing that kind of set the stage for this concept. And it was the delineation between salvation being a call forward and your calling being a call upward. Can you dive into that a little bit? Because I thought that was a really great concept that set up that whole idea that you're talking through. Talk us through that, because I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, so the language that I use is that the direction of salvation is forward, and the direction of calling is upward. And that salvation keeps you from being stuck. And so you should never, when you accept what God has done and see the reality of what Jesus paid on your behalf, you should never be stuck in your past, in your sin, in guilt, in shame. There should be no bitter root in your life. Like, the work of forgiveness undoes every last bit of that. So now there's something for you forward. Yeah. And what we find is, and what we see from practical stories, is that when people come to a radical encounter with Jesus, that all of a sudden they realize they have a future.
Yes.
Before, their past seemed insurmountable. And so there is no addiction that keeps you stuck in your past. Yep. Salvation breaks those chains, gives you a path forward.
Yes.
But the language and the direction changes when Scripture starts talking about calling. And it starts talking about upward. And so just like some examples, our character is called to be above reproach.
Yes.
like above what people would disagree. When it talks about our time, Nehemiah uses the language. He says, I cannot come down because I'm doing a great work.
Good.
Yeah.
In Philippians, when Paul describes the race run out for us in the English Standard Version, he says the upward call.
Yes.
And so it's this like fascinating thing that what calling does, salvation moves you forward, but calling elevates the life that you're living. And all of a sudden, your character and your time and your disciplines and your habits and your gifting, you see them in new light because you want to make your life, you already have worth, you already have meaning, but you want to make your life as meaningful and as significant for the sake of the kingdom as you possibly can.
Ah, that's so good. I feel like that was a message that resonated with me personally. Like, honestly, I'm sitting there with all the leaders at Church for the One, and I'm going, oh, this hits hard. Like, I'm writing notes going, oh, Kevin knew I was going to be here and said this just because he knew I needed to hear this. You know how that goes. And I feel like that challenge and that delineation, I feel like it resonated. I hope that that's true. I hope that you've gotten good feedback from that conference with your people. But man, I felt like it was not only important and necessary for people to hear, but it's really relevant for where we find ourselves today in this culture that now considers itself, post-Christian. If you're looking to start a revival, I think you said M25, we're actually looking at an awakening now because nobody really has anything to go back to. And when you start realizing the people around us who are lost, who are desperate for hope, we got to lean into that calling. We got to make our life matter. Let's invest in things that have eternal significance. And I think it's a rallying cry, Kevin, what you're doing, just saying, hey, make sure you stay focused on what really is important. And if God is giving you a calling, not a calling that you got from Good Morning America, but if God is giving you a calling, lean into that. Make sure that that's the most important thing. It's a good word, Kevin. It's a good word.
Well, thanks, my friend. And I'm so grateful you were there, as always.
Well, I knew there was going to be a donut truck, and at the end, that's what I was really focused on and excited about. So
that donut truck, that thing was sweet.
It was pretty solid. Can we just laugh for a second also that VJ got up at the end of that in a black velour jumpsuit with gold bling and started, was he singing Ice Ice Baby? Is that what he was doing?
Yeah, a little bit.
I believe Melanie was sitting in the row in front of me and kind of not knowing what to do. It was a little cringy for her. And I just told her, just embrace it, Melanie. It's awesome. It is what it is. Lean into it.
She's well used to it at this point in time. There's no change in that man.
Dana, I see the same reactions from Dana. Like, she loves it, but she doesn't really know how to respond to it in real time. Yeah.
It's great.
I love it. Kevin, thank you for joining us. It's always great to have you on the podcast. I still remember you were very irritated and very upset that you weren't the first guest, but you're a recurring guest and you're one of our favorites. So just be proud of that. All right. You're going to be back as often as you're willing to come. We will have you. So just know that. All right. You're the best. You're the best. We want you.
If at some point in time my recurring guestdom doesn't lead us to start calling this Bold Moves with Tim and Kevin, then something is terribly off. So we'll just set that as the bar of expectation from here on out.
Duly noted. That's where this ends. I got you. That's fantastic. Kevin, thanks again for joining us. It's always great to have you. We'll see you soon.
Grateful for you.
Kevin, I truly love that guy. He's fantastic. He's
so smart.
He is. He's almost too smart.
Does he ever have dumb moments? Like, you guys are good friends. Yeah. Like, is he always the smart friend?
He's always smart. It's honestly, it's maddening.
Goodness.
Like, he's got it all.
He's probably the responsible one. Yeah. He has like everything. Yeah. Packed,
he's got
ready
all the
to
gifts.
Go on all
he can communicate. He's awesome, and he's super smart. He's got it all. He's the total package. What do you do with that?
Are you guys talking about Kevin or me? I'm just kidding.
I love that. I
love Kevin. I love that. This is my take, and I'm sure this isn't true for everybody, but he has a kind of a knack to be able to say offensive things in a way that doesn't offend people.
Yes.
Which is really hard to do, actually.
Yeah.
Also another gift that we just go, oh, Kevin, are you serious? You can do that too? That's wild. No, I love that. And honestly, just to kind of put a cherry on the top of everything we talked about today, it's that concept of, man, salvation is the calling that moves us forward, right? In our relationship with God, of knowing who we are, who I am in Jesus. But that calling, it takes me beyond that. and it creates a sense of urgency to the people around me. And my prayers shift, right? Like from being self-centered and about me and about my health and about my things to really praying with a heavy heart for the people who are around me who are lost. And I would encourage you, if you've joined us today and you've made it till the end of the podcast, I would just encourage you that this week your bold move would be lifting up in prayer those who are lost and figuring out what it is that you can do to bring them to Jesus. Because, man, Jesus changes everything. And the boldest move we can make is to be that light that shines in the darkness and brings them to him. So let's make that our bold move this week. Let's make that our calling. Let's bring some people to Jesus. Thanks for joining. This has been Bold Moves, and we will see you next time.